Well, hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar, Solving Foreign Material Contamination, How External X-ray Inspection Saves More Product and Reduces Rework. So this event is brought to you by Food Safety Magazine and it is sponsored by FlexXray. I'm Adrienne Bloom, Editorial Director of Food Safety Magazine, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. So thanks for joining us. Now, today's presenters with us from FlexXray are Kai Luker, Chief Product Officer, and also Kurt Westmoreland, Chief Commercial Officer. Now, I'll rejoin Kai and Kurt at the end to help answer your questions that come in throughout the webinar. So don't forget to submit those in the Q&A and chat section of the webinar console. And today's event is also being recorded and will be archived on food-safety.com. So with that said, I'm excited to turn it over to today's presenters. So take it away, guys.
Thank you, Adrienne. So yeah, we would like to thank all of you for attending this webinar today. We're excited about it. Kai's been in this business longer than I have, and we've learned a lot through the years. And so we hope today that we're going to be able to share some of that knowledge with you so that you can get a better understanding for what it looks like when you're working with third parties and doing X-ray type services. So with that, we'll get right into the presentation. So as we go through this from a key discussion topic, the first thing we're going to talk about is really how does foreign material contamination impact your bottom line, and what does that mean? And then from there, we'll talk about different solutions that you can look at and work with to resolve foreign material contamination, and then we'll get into the specifics of what it's like working with a third-party company to do foreign material X-ray work, that kind of thing. So as we get into this, one of the first things that we want to do is give you guys an opportunity to be a bit interactive here. And so we've got a polling question up. And the question here is, how frequently do you experience a foreign material contamination? So if you guys, we'll give you about 20 seconds now. So if you'll all kind of jump into that and start answering, and then we'll take a look at the results. All right, so let's see what our results look like here. So when you take a look at it, it's interesting for us because we recently commissioned a study with our customers, and really it was about market awareness. And this is one of the questions that we actually put out there. And one of the things that we saw was that a lot of people in the industry, just as this notes, have weekly challenges with foreign materials. And so what does that mean? And I think a lot of times what that means is your metal detectors are detecting something, you're finding something. But when you take a look at this, the number of issues, the number of contaminations, or the number of challenges that you guys have in the industry, it's not small. And it's pretty frequent. It's something that you guys, obviously, from your food safety program have to manage and you have to work against. When you take a look at some of the things that are out there in terms of what does it mean and how does this impact the marketplace, how does it impact the supply chain and those kind of things. If you take a look at this right here, these are just some examples with names obviously blotted out, but you're taking a look at complaints around the recall of beef products. You're taking dumplings, there was a challenge there. 35,000 pounds of turkey sausages were called, over different periods of times. And when you take a look at the data there and below it, so far in 2024, there's already been 15 recalls around foreign material. In 2023, there were 70 total. And when we did our survey, basically what we saw is, like we were just talking about, 73% of the companies that responded to the survey have some type of a foreign material contamination at least quarterly. And again, it can be metal, plastic, stone, wood, whatever it may be. You guys, know your products better than we do, but it's just interesting how much this is occurring out in the marketplace. So, that's enough right now for me, kind of giving the background of what we look at and how we're looking at it and what's going on in the marketplace. I'd like to give Kai an opportunity right here to respond a bit and tell us a bit more about what happens in terms of foreign material entering the supply chain.
So shortly, how does foreign material enter the supply chain? And the answer really is everywhere. From raw materials, we even find customers that have issues with buckshot and various animal products before processing, incidents involved with actual manufacture, processing, production. For those of you that are inside the food manufacturing world, you understand that this is a daily battle to try to fight and mitigate foreign material risks.
Kai, having been with FlexXray for 8 or so years, give the audience a couple of, I guess, the more interesting things that you found or we've seen over the years.
I often joke with folks that ask that question. I have seen the more interesting things whenever I was actually involved with the production of the food product itself. From a FlexXray perspective, we have the opportunity to help once that incident has already occurred, but wire is probably one of the most interesting things, especially electrical wire. We have found pieces of welding slag from installations and things like that, glass, plastic. And then a couple of years ago, we considered it the year of jewelry. We found at least 3 different pieces of GMP violations from various manufacturers.
Yeah, and one of the things that, in my early days with FlexXray, one of the things that we found was a folded up $50 bill on the top of a block of frozen protein. So that was kind of interesting as well. We did ship it back to the company so that we don't know. The person probably never got it, but at least we sent it back. When you take a look at where foreign material enters the supply chain, in terms of the work that we do, Kai, what area, where does it come in mostly, or where does it originate most of the time for what we're doing?
The majority is taking place in a production environment, especially highly processed foods, opportunities where grinding, extruding, blending of ingredients is occurring. So it's a significant opportunity there for metal inclusion.
Okay. Right. All right, and I'll let you continue with this one, here as well, Kai. But there's different things that that we know that lead to issues with the foreign materials, and so we'll get into some more detail right here.
I'm fortunate with FlexXray to solve all of the problems that I really helped create whenever I was in the food industry myself. So from a line extension time, anytime that we did a line extension in my previous life, having to deal with the installation not going correctly or a design flaw within that, or it not being operationally ready to meet the standards from a production standpoint, new construction, debris from the construction itself, the installation itself, or just teaching associates how to utilize a new piece of equipment and going through the learning curve and of proper setup and establishing those procedures the right way. And then with life cycle management of the equipment itself, as things begin to age and break down, operators have a tendency to personalize things to make it easier for themselves to work on a piece of equipment or utilize a piece of equipment, but that doesn't always mean it's the best thing for food safety. And then even maintenance itself, putting something back together after a complete teardown or reassembly is obviously a tedious exercise with lots of parts that need to be maintained, and oftentimes some of those things get missed.
Yeah, and to expand on that a little bit around the maintenance, one of the things that we've seen customers start to look at in terms of the routine maintenance is when you're looking at the components that go into equipment, whether it's gaskets or whatever it may be, is taking a look at those and doing some evaluation to determine if in fact those components are X-ray detectable, even with an inline X-ray. Because if you're in a situation, because eventually those components, they break down, things happen. But if you're in a situation when it happens and it's still not X-ray detectable, that's when you can really get into some issues with large-scale contamination across the product. But if you've got a situation where they are X-ray detectable, whether it's inline or whether you're using a third party like us, to do that, now you're able to recover the product where it's not, versus not being able to recover it due to the fact that things just can't be found. So something to keep in mind. All right, so this is a busy slide. Got a lot of good information here. So Kai, why don't you talk a little bit about really what the cost of foreign material contamination can be.
Really, the highlights here are the things that we deal with every day in a food manufacturing setting, and trying to evaluate not only the cost of destroying product as it relates to potential foreign material but what is it going to take in order to reproduce, remake, reschedule all of those things, the potential impact, all the way down to our relationships with the retailers. Are we going to be able to get this back on the shelf in a timely manner? Are we going to risk shortages at the store level or at a food service environment? How effective are we going to be able to execute this rework ourselves, and at what cost? Do we have to shut lines down? Is this an overtime? Do we have the right skill set in order to be able to do that? And of course, then some of the softer things, brand reputation, regulatory compliance, fine avoidance, those types of issues are obviously not last of mind here by any means, but once we've got a handle on the hold itself and how we're going to evaluate addressing the hold, there's still a host of other questions to be asked and answered.
Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned there was the opportunity cost of rework. And a lot of times, people look at it and we're going to bring people in on the weekend. We're going to have to rerun the line. We're going to have to do all that kind of thing. But what you often don't think about is the opportunity cost of the lost time of running the equipment to produce other product that you're going to put into commerce. So it's really kind of a double hit when you're having to rework the product internally because you're losing that production time on the line as well. All right, and let's talk a little bit about what can be some of the true downstream impacts before material contamination. Okay.
We listed those primary reasons earlier, but customer dissatisfaction, obviously with missed orders, not executing to your customers' expectations around order fulfillment, space challenges, dealing with holding inventory in order to make a decision and not having the space because that's a premium in order to be able to keep product flowing through post-production. Downgraded product, whether that's putting it into a different product stream or into animal feed, there's obviously lost value based on that initial production not meeting standards. And then finally, the cost of landfill, and oftentimes we don't think of the landfill cost. It's not just the cost to get it to landfill, but obviously it's the cost of reproduction, remake, and then sometimes the handling itself of the landfill product.
Yeah, and the last bullet there around sustainability goals being intact, and we know that a lot of our customers have got very defined sustainability goals. And one of the key things that feeds into that or that impacts that is reducing food waste. And the one thing that's important for the work that we do is, we talk to our customers about this. About 98% of the product that we inspect in our facilities goes back into commerce. So when we're doing the work for you guys, we're only pulling out and we're only destroying the product that we identify as having a problem. The rest of it, we load it back up on the truck and you guys are able to keep it in the supply chain and keep it in commerce. And that's a big number. When you start thinking about, 100,000 pound lots that we're doing work on and you're able to keep 98,000 pounds of it in commerce, not only is it a big economic boost for the company, but it has a major impact on the reduction of food waste in society. All right, give you guys a chance to get a little bit more input here. Got another polling question. We'll give you about 20, 30 seconds on this one. How often or how do you most often manage product that's on hold due to foreign material contamination? So we'll let you guys go from here. Okay, and this is similar to what we've seen in some of the work that we've done with our supply or with our customers, and asking them questions. And and the data shows that everybody initially wants to try to rework or reinspect the product internally. And it's the simplest, easiest for you guys. There's no doubt about it. Whether it's with a metal detector and inline X-ray. And if it's economically feasible for you to do so, absolutely, and that's what we see. The poll here shows that as well. Where this one's a little bit different than what we've seen in the past, and it's interesting, is that 21% of you guys noted that we were disposing in a landfill, and only 4 of you were looking at a third-party provider like us. A lot of the data that we've seen, those are a bit more equal, but again, this is a fairly small sample size here. But it's something to think about, and it's and I think a lot of the times the reason people don't necessarily look at using a third-party provider is because you're just not aware of it. You're not aware that the offering is out there. But obviously with sustainability goals and the need to reduce food waste, we're all trying to keep product out of the landfill, and that's what we're here to do, is help you guys do that. But that data is pretty interesting there. All right. So how do we resolve what's going on with foreign material contamination? So Kai, you want to jump in on this one a bit here?
Just to reiterate what Kurt was talking about earlier from a disposal standpoint and the impacts of that, and what kind of decisions are being made from a disposal standpoint. And then again, similarly from an inspection internally, evaluating the technology, evaluating the competency, those types of things. And then what we want to highlight specifically here is the outsourcing to third party. In order to protect your brand and reputation, to have an objective group of people with the right technology, the right skill sets, in order to be able to keep you doing what you do best, which is making good product and getting that out to your customers.
A lot of times they'll ask me, what is it? How does it work? How does your process work? And it's something, unless you see it, it is a bit hard to visualize, because you think in terms of line speeds and line productions. But one of the things that I tell people is think TSA pre-check for food. And it's very similar to if you're flying, the way you put your luggage through, it goes through very, very slowly. You've got people there looking at the screens, picking out issues with luggage, same thing. That's what we're very much like TSA pre-check for food. And that's at 4 feet a minute, then that gives you the opportunity to see a whole lot more stuff.
So for the most part, we've told you about things that you obviously already know and you're dealing with on a daily basis. So let's get into a little bit about how FlexXray works, how we can support foreign material mitigation strategies. So from a third-party perspective, inline capacity constraints, the line speed, a single line, a single piece of equipment is obviously an issue. From a third-party standpoint, we have multiple machines and multiple facilities to be able to execute a single truckload quickly and to be able to turn around that product and get it back to distribution in the safest, most efficient manner possible. And the cost of conducting internal rework obviously can skyrocket, especially if you have to pull people off for overtime labor or even shut a line down to be able to utilize that inline resource to do an offline inspection. So for us, our detection capabilities are significantly higher. It's not that we have a better piece of equipment. It's just that we have the right equipment suited for offline inspection. And with the number of assets that we have, we can offer the fastest turnaround times possible and get you the product disposition that you need.
Speaking of turnaround time, share with the group a little bit about how quickly we can actually turn a full truck.
And a facility of ours where we have full labor available, we can turn around fresh product in as short as 2 hours.
And if you have to do an out-of-the-case project 4 to 5?
It can extend up to 4 to 5.
Okay. So you think about that. You get a truck comes to the facility. We schedule the time with it. And most of the time, the driver stays there and waits with the truck. We turn the entire project around in, let's say, 2 to 5 hours, and the truck gets back out on the road with 98% of the product, on average, 98% of the product, back into commerce.
Just to highlight a little bit about the technology itself that we're utilizing. Again, our technology isn't better or worse than any inline technology. It's the right tool for the job, and everyone in the manufacturing industry is using the right X-ray tool or right metal detector for the job. From a third-party perspective, because of the slow speed that we're able to process the images with, we can create higher levels of grayscale, better resolution, and ultimately better detection capabilities overall when we couple a higher powered X-ray with medical grade imaging devices, slow down the inspection process significantly, and then leverage additional software in order to support an operator-based inspection. By combining all of these things together, we can find plastic and other difficult to see objects down to 2 and 3 millimeters, and metallic objects at 0.5 millimeters or even less.
Well, let's clarify. We're still not going to be able to work on a miracle and be able to find bag liners and gloves and those kind of things.
Not yet.
Wish we could, but right now we can't. So, all right.
Just want to take a quick review here just so everybody understands what technologies are obviously available for inline inspection and offline inspection. Metal detection, everyone is familiar with. Vision systems have come a long way as it relates to AI and machine learning capabilities. Hyperspectral is, I would call it the newest version of a vision system that's using near infrared spectroscopy in order to support additional foreign material evaluation. The limitations of those two, though, unfortunately, are that it's a surface level inspection only. Microwave would be the best technology out there, but with the most limited use case. It needs to be a pump or fluid-based product and very, very homogeneous. But microwave technology allows you to establish a baseline of what your product looks like via microwave, and then anytime that that's disrupted, it can trigger an ejection of that. It can find virtually any inorganic material. X-ray, almost over 50% of the food industry now uses X-ray. I'll move along to CT technology. So we use a base X-ray technology in the majority of our equipment, and then now we're leaning into the next step with CT technology. The benefit of CT technology as we advance from an X-ray standpoint is to be able to create a three-dimensional look. So the positional constraints of wire and what the location or orientation was, or a piece of plastic, those issues are removed from a CT standpoint because we're able to rebuild a three-dimensional image and find the foreign object virtually anywhere within the product zone.
Great.
And then lastly, from a data perspective, we're here to provide the best data possible to help you make the best decisions for hold and release. Our goal here is not to scrub product in order to ensure that everything that possibly could have been found is removed from that. We find objects down to small sizes that are well beyond the detection limits of inline instruments. But the thing that we want to provide the most is the opportunity to have hard data to make good hold and release decisions of your product.
And give you the ability to make a risk-based decision as well, because it's one of those things that, depending on whether or not it's a potential choking hazard or a food safety issue, you may be able to make a decision really based upon the size of what we're looking for and how easy it is to be found. So we'll talk a little bit about helping prevent foreign material events. One of the things that we've been working with a lot of the folks in the industry on is really looking at supplier monitoring programs. And what does that mean in terms of doing some upfront inspection of new or challenging suppliers? Probably a lot of you guys on this call participate in supplier monitoring programs now, but more from a microbiological or a chemical standpoint. Is the possible inclusion of foreign material inspection is something that could be considered there as well. And along those same lines, as you're looking at co-packers or looking at new co-packers and doing your due diligence around the new co-packers, what does it mean in terms of taking a look at those guys and seeing really what the background is from a foreign material standpoint? And then the other one's really, we're talking about doing portfolio builds, but really what that means is if you've got known SKUs that you've had known issues with known contaminants, rather than waiting until there might be a potential additional issue or additional challenge with that, to then have the product tested with us so that we can tell you if we can or can't find it, go ahead and take a look at what those are and let us do some of that upfront testing and essentially build your own personal database around your SKUs. So you really expedite the process, should you need to use a third-party provider. And that's it really from an overall standpoint of the detail that we were going to share today. I did want to put this up there and do a little bit of a commercial here. Our goal is to be as close as we can possibly be to the major food manufacturers around the country. You can see there on the map where we're at right now. The home office is here in Arlington, Texas, where Kai and I are today. We got one there in Fort Mill, South Carolina, which is just outside of Charlotte, Vineland, New Jersey, then one in Aurora, Illinois, and the one out there in Vegas will be opening in about 5 to 6 weeks. We think we're close, and the goal is we want to try to be within 4 hours of most of the food manufacturing, so that it's easy for a truck to get to us in one day. We're also looking at expansion into other areas that I won't really get into right now. But if you look at the open spots on the map there, you can pretty much figure out where we're looking at potentially expanding as we go forward, because that's the goal. We want you guys to be able to get product to us easily and get it back into commerce easily. And so in terms of the full presentation, that's where we're at. I know we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left here for questions. So, Adrian, if we've got questions, we'll be happy to answer those.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you for that great presentation, Kai and Kurt. That was awesome, and sure the attendees found it very informational and very interesting. So now let's get to a few questions with the time we have left here. All right, I am going to throw out a question to you two. So we have a couple of questions around the topic of plastic. So one attendee is asking if a foreign material is, for example, plastic from a bag that was used during cooking preparation, how would you use third-party help for this?
I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, the detection capabilities at a bag liner, packaging material level right now are very limited in use case and scope. Other things like gaskets, O-rings, utensils that are used in cleaning of parts and equipment, those things, we've had a significant uptick in the detectability as we've improved our technology over time. And now with our foray into CT scanning and 3D technology, we've added even more capabilities to be able to detect things that were virtually undetectable. I wish I could say the same for gloves and bag liners, but still on the undetectable list at the moment.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that. All right, another good question for you guys. How often do you feel that third-party contractors contribute to foreign material contamination?
From a co-packing or co-manufacturing standpoint, I'm assuming that every single one of us on the call have dealt with supplier issues or co-manufacturing issues in the past. It's difficult because you're not in direct control of those processes.
And I think that's one of the things when you start looking at co-packers, as I mentioned a couple of slides back, is really that due diligence. So as you're starting to evaluate, take a look at those co-packers, maybe do a truckload of product of the type that they're going to be producing for you, just to make sure that there's nothing going on behind the scenes that you're not aware of.
Okay, great. And we have time for one last question here. Can you detect chicken bones from a commodity chicken? And if so, down to what size?
Depending upon the configuration or what product that it is in, down to 1.5 millimeters.
No, the one thing where you will have some challenges, and it's important to differentiate between bone and cartilage. Because the cartilage is not as easy to find and detect, but the bone, it's something, and frankly, it's probably one of the most frequent requests that we have.
Detecting an indigenous material in any protein, whether that's protein is used as an ingredient or as the product itself, although our detection capabilities are significant, sometimes, although we can find it down to 1.5 millimeters, that may put a substantial portion of the lot at risk, because we will find 1.5 millimeters in virtually all of a lot at times.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for answering those questions, Kai and Kurt. And this was a great discussion, but unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions today. But Please join me once again in thanking Kai and Kurt for their presentation, as well as today's sponsor, FlexXray. So if you have any additional questions or comments, please don't hesitate to click that email us button on the console, and we'll share them with our presenters so that they can respond directly to you. And if you didn't have a chance to fill it out earlier, you'll be redirected shortly to the post-event survey. We always look forward to hearing how to make our programs work better for you, so we appreciate your time filling out that survey. And we're also glad that you joined us on this webinar today. We hope you found it to be a valuable experience. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.